Okay. And just a reminder, again, if you need to step away, totally fine. If you need to leave early, totally fine. Do what works best for you. We will have some kind of announcements at the end, but I want to get started with the book. So today, our special guest is Theresa. How do you pronounce your last name?
It is Bielawski.
Bielawski.
Yeah.
So our special guest today is Theresa Bielawski, who is the author of this fabulous new book, which I am holding up, A Guide to Brooks Camp in Katmai National Park, Alaska, and the Bears of Brooks Falls. This is just out. I think a lot of people here have already, look at all the people who are holding up their books already. Excellent. My goodness. Wow, you guys, fantastic. And Theresa, there's a couple of people who couldn't be here today who also have purchased the book, and several people have said that they plan to take it with them to when they go to Brooks this summer. So
Awesome.
A timely discussion.
Where was it ordered?
Where
Just anywhere or from Katmai?
So this is one of the questions that I have for our author is how can people get the book? Theresa, do you want to answer that question now?
Sure. So just to give you a little history, this is basically a self-published book. So it's a book that isn't going to be on the New York Times bestseller list or anything like that, because we have a very specialized crowd. It's kind of a labor of love type of book, and I did the book to make it so that you could take it along with you to Brooks.
Oh,
in the past, I have printed up the NPS pages, and it just doesn't work taking that whole big giant thing and trying to print it. I mean, it's like 85 pages, and even if you just do the pictures of the bears, I have found that some of their pictures are old. They're from when they were cubs or when they were sub-adults, and they're now 15 years old. And so so I did a self-publishing book. So I basically just have a link that you can that I can send to Stacy, that she can send out after the fact, where you just go in and order it. I'm sending them out myself. The cost of the book is $24.95, and it's $6 shipping and handling. I will tell you, from January to April, when I actually printed them, the price of each individual book, just printing it, went up $3 a book. And so it's not a book I'm making a killing on. I'm not trying to, I will be lucky if I break even on this, but it was more of a labor of love to kind of help people, because I have been lucky enough to go so many times and I have recent pictures. So that's really the gist of it. But I'll send Stacy the link, and it looks like she actually already put it in the chat so that you can order from there. I get the book sent out usually within a day or two, and it's media mail. So I'm finding people on the West Coast are getting it within a couple days. And unfortunately, people on the East Coast, it's taking up to the full 10 days that they say. So 7 to 10 days if you're on the East Coast. If you're international, I've had a couple people order international. You just have to get me your address, and then I'll let you know what the pricing is. I can tell you, to Germany, it was $17, and to Spain, it was $16. So I think international prices are, they run about that. I do have one person, and I'm not sure if she's on the call. I haven't looked at the whole list, but she's going to be at Brooks in September when I'm there. So I'm going to bring her a book then, so that she doesn't have to pay that huge cost.
So I'm seeing from the chat, several people have been able to order it from Amazon. I did post the Scott Publishing link, and I will send it out as well. I'll send a link to the recording and a link to the book after the chat. Before I take questions, I'm just going to go, because Theresa, you hit on a couple of things that I wanted to ask you about. How many times have you been to Brooks Falls?
So I have been 10 times in the last 9 years.
Fantastic.
My first trip was a day trip in 2013, and it was kind of at the top of my bucket list, and I had to go to Alaska for work. So I made sure that on my weekend that was one thing I was going to do. And like I said, I just went for a day trip.
And what were your impressions on your first visit?
You know, it was awesome just even going to see it because grizzly bears have been my favorite animal since I was 5 years old. My mom took me to some Disney movie. I can't even remember the name of it. I have it now. But and I just loved grizzly bears. So I always used to watch the documentaries about those bears that were on the falls. And I didn't know anybody that had gone there. I knew people that had been to Alaska, but nobody that had gone to Brooks. So I just started doing my research when I knew I was going. And like I said, I did a day trip. And then after that, my second year, I had a couple of friends that were supposed to go with me. We got a campsite and neither of them saved their money. So I ended up going by myself, but I just went and camped and I went most years I camped. I did not win the lottery until 2019. That was the first time I stayed in the lodge. And
And
so
when you went the first time, did you think it would be kind of like one and done, or did you, when you went for the first time, was your bucket list to go once and then check it off, or did you know that you were going to keep going back?
I knew once I was there, I wanted to go back. And in most of my travels, I'm finding now anyways, because I do a lot of traveling and I do a lot of traveling alone, is that I'm finding now that my first trip is always a trip to do research and how do I do this trip better. And so when I went, once I was there and was on the platform, it was just amazing. We didn't have any close encounters with bears on the trails or anything like that. And so it wasn't till the second year that I felt like I really had the real experience. But I was definitely hooked the first time I went. It's just so amazing to be amongst these incredible animals and being so close and being able to observe them in their natural habitat, you know, and yeah, there's a little bit of disruption just from the humans because we have the platforms and all those kind of things. But I think Brooks is like no other place. Because you do have this close contact and you are able to just be amongst the bears, which you can't do even in a lot of places in Alaska. The bears are not quite as tolerant of the humans, if at all. So I have to say that if you haven't been to Brooks, you should go to Brooks because it is kind of a life-changing event. I feel like it was for me.
Theresa, do you watch the cams as well?
I occasionally watch the cams. I more or less do a lot of highlights. I watch a lot of the highlights just because of the time constraints. I still work full time. I'm the president of a nonprofit. I have high maintenance animals at home. So kind of in between all these things, I have found Travel Guide, I watch a lot of the highlights they have because Heather seems to pick out a lot of the good stuff that happened to watch. So I do watch them occasionally, but I don't have as much time as I would like to actually watch them like a lot of people do.
And I just want to give a shout out to Heather Wells, who is here from Travel Guidebook. Yay. Thank you, Heather, for being here. Theresa, so I feel like a lot of people have read the book, but for those people who haven't read the book, tell us first, how did the idea for the book come about? And then tell us about the structure and why you chose that structure.
Okay. So it's something actually, Heather, you know, she works for Scott's Publishing. It's something that we've talked about throughout the years. And there's a lot of people that go to Brooks intermittently, but because I've been able to go so often and get pictures every single year, and I do know a lot of the bears, I felt like I was in a good position to do this because I do have recent pictures of a lot of the most frequent bears that go there. And 2020 was the first time I've gone in September, and even bears that I knew looked completely different. So that even kind of played into, you know, I've got pictures of these bears now at different times of the year when they look completely different. And I guess I just felt like I was in a good position to write this book and be accurate in a lot of what I wrote. In addition, the fact that I've gone so much, in the beginning of the book, I kind of gave people a bird's eye view of here's how I get to Brooks. I have to do the lottery first. And then what if I don't get the lottery? Well, maybe you can camp or you can do day trips. So I kind of put it in the beginning of the book to help people with general information about Brooks. I didn't want to make it a real technical book and go into a lot of different, technical things, but give people ideas of what to expect when they get there, what they need to bring. I just put some links for some online information, but like I said, I didn't want to get too detailed because you can kind of get lost in the details sometimes if there's too much. And it's kind of just a general, hey, I want to go to Brooks. How do I do it? I need a wheelchair. Is there disability access? What other, I have a small little thing on there about the Valley of 10,000 Smokes tour. I've done that twice. If you're going for a day trip, obviously I wouldn't recommend doing it, but if you're going to be there for 3 days or more, it's worth seeing at least once in your lifetime because it's like nothing you've ever seen. So I kind of structured it to where the beginning of the book just kind of helps you with general information. Some people, if they've been there, they already know that, but it's a good reminder too if you haven't gone. And then I picked, it says 40 bears, but there's actually 42 bears that I have recent pictures of, and I tried to pick different pictures so that people can see this same bear doesn't even look the same in these two pictures, but you can kind of, maybe recognize, especially if you're there in September, this bear isn't going to look the same in July, but in September, it's going to look similar. And so, and there's some bears that I really like that I didn't put in here because I just didn't have good pictures of them or I hadn't seen them, but I wanted to at least have a nice selection of different bears, and especially a lot of the popular ones that are maybe easier, like Otis, for people to be able to identify while they're there. So they can pull this book out and go, hey, wait a second, that looks like this bear. And, and it may help them identify them.
I appreciate that Otis has an extra long spread, appropriate for the inaugural Hall of Fame nominee. I have to ask, was our beloved 89 backpack a bear who you wanted to include but were unable to for some inexplicable reason?
Yeah, I don't have a ton of pictures of backpack
I figured.
for some reason, or if I do, it might be like one butt shot from one year. So I didn't have the selection. I mean, there's other ones like Peanut that are bears that I really like that I would love to have in there, but I don't have any good or for sure pictures. And I will say I've gotten in with somebody on bear management, and I'm not going to say who because they don't want everybody to know, but she helped me with a lot of the IDs on bears I don't have in here, but that are recent sub-adults, because some of the new sub-adults, I'm like, who are they?
Yeah.
But if I ever update the book, now I've got some pictures of some of the newer subs.
I loved the photos that you included, even though backpack wasn't there. To me, you really captured not just the physical characteristics, but what Mike calls, I think, the gestalt of the bears, the Otisness of Otis and the chunkiness of Chunk. So bravo. I have other questions, but I'm seeing a lot of hands raised in chat. So I think if it's all right, I'll hold my questions and we'll open it up to the group. So if you do have a question, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand using the reactions function down at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you click reactions, you'll see an option to raise your hand. You can also just do this and raise your hand in real life, and I or somebody will see you. If you are hidden and you want to ask a question, you can either post it in the chat by typing it in chat, or just say something and our attention will be drawn to you and I will call on you. But let's go ahead and start asking questions. And if we run out of things to talk about, I'll loop back. You guys, it occurs to me, I think Theresa can answer questions about trip planning, about bear identification, about photography, probably about lots of other stuff. So feel free to ask questions on a range of topics to our talented and experienced guest. Narit, you're up first, and then Cynthia. And Narit, you'll need to unmute.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
I'm not good with these things, and I just wanted to know if, am I the only one that cannot see Theresa, or everybody doesn't see her? Because I cannot see her. I just see her name. So
So I apologize. It wasn't till I got on the Zoom call. Apparently the last update on my computer has made my camera unoperable. And I don't want to have to try to do an update and mess up the call or whatever. So I apologize because I had actually planned to be on camera, but it keeps telling me that it's not recognizing my camera.
it's okay. I just wondered, am I just, so I understand that that's how it is. That's fine. I can hear you very well. So that's great. Theresa, you just said that you didn't put, for example, 89, because you didn't have good photos. How do you get a good photo? Is it that it is in focus so you can see it properly? Is it that it's close enough? And if you have to go really very close to the bear, or can you take a photo from far away? And then once you took all the photos, do you ID the bear as you see the bear? Oh, this is Chunk. I'm going to take now photos of him. Or you just take photos, and then maybe in the evening, when there's nothing else to do, you look at all the photos and you ID them. I wonder, how do you do it? And I don't want to take too much time because I know everybody wants to ask questions. I also have questions about photography, but maybe on the next round. So I'll stay with this. Curious to know, how do you take a good photo, and what is a good photo? For me, all the photos that are in your book are amazing. The eyes, I can see the bear's eyes. It's just, it's fantastic. Anyway.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for the compliment. I'm glad you liked it. So what I will say is I have some pretty serious photography equipment. People that see me walking, if you've seen me at Brooks, I have a monopod with a big giant long lens on it. And I have two long lenses. One is a 200 to 400 and one is a 500. And the 500 is a great lens because it has a really long reach. So the bears that are across the falls, I can still get a pretty good picture of them that you're just not going to get with like an iPhone. If somebody that's taking pictures on their phone, it's going to be really tough to get a good quality pictures. Now, what you can do is there's plenty of places that rent cameras and lenses online. And there's even a camera store in Anchorage that will rent them. And for me, it's probably worth it on a trip like this, because how often are you going to be able to be that close to bears and get these kind of pictures? So a lot of it has to do with the equipment. And typically the way I just take pictures, like a lot of them, I know who I'm taking pictures of while I'm taking them, but there's plenty of them that I can't quite figure it out. And perfect example, one from last July, I had sent to my person that I know that does bear management. And I'm like, I know this bear, but I can't put my finger on it. And it turns out it was 273. And the last time I had seen her was in the fall when she was really fat and still had cubs. And now she didn't have cubs, and she just looked a lot different than she did in previous Julys that I had seen her. So as soon as she said it was 273, I was like, I see it now. But at the time I couldn't put my finger on it. So there's a lot of times there are bears that I can't necessarily figure out. And sometimes there will be other people on the platforms there that they know a bear that you don't, or I haven't gotten a good look at them. And they've been there longer than I have. And they said, oh, well, when they was facing us, that looked like Bucky Dent or whoever it was. So a lot of times if you're there, you can also ask, because it seems like there's always fans that are there, at least when I've been there. So, don't be afraid, even if you're there, to ask people, do you know what bear that is? So it's kind of been a handful of different things. And there are some that even the bear management, they don't know for sure. And I have found the longer I go, everybody always wants that epic shot of the bear catching the fish on the falls. And I have become much less about getting epic shots and more about getting as many shots as I can so that I can ID the bear. So I will take pictures of scars, and I will take pictures that, well, do we really want that bear's butt? Well, it's got a big scar on it, so I do want it, because later on I'll know that bear, that's Pepper. He had a, he had a scar on his right back. I don't remember, it was the back front or the back left, but regardless. So I'm finding now I'm taking more pictures to ID the bears as time has gone on. Whereas I used to be like, oh, I want that perfect picture of the mom and the cub and all that kind of stuff. So I think for me, I've evolved into what I'm looking for. But to get a good picture, you do have to have some, at least you don't have to have the best equipment, but you have to have some good equipment. And then I actually bought, because I'm getting more and more crazy about it. I tell people I'm in a bear cult, but I bought a couple of pads of waterproof paper and a pencil. And so you can write on them. And I'm now taking the last time I went, I have this little pad with me so that if there's something, it's a bear I don't know very well, but I can put some little notes down like, I saw XYZ bear, took pictures of him standing on the island doing whatever, you know what I mean? So that I can go back later and go, oh yeah, that was that bear. So it's kind of a whole slew. I know I kind of gave you a whole wide range of things, but it's kind of a whole slew of different things.
Your comment about the paper makes me think of Mike Fitz and, his little notebook that he takes notes in as well. So you're not alone with the note taking, Theresa.
Yeah, I started that in 2021, and I did it actually when I went to McNeil, because I didn't know any of those bears. But I'm like, you know what? I need this for Brooks too, because sometimes I do take pictures and then later on I'm like, dang it, which bear is that? So
I want Nurit, a quick follow up. You are muted. So a quick follow up from Nurit, and then I'm going to go to Cynthia. And then after that, we have a question in the chat and then a question from Bob. So Nurit, you'll need to unmute.
It's just that I asked in my question was that how close do you get, to the bears to be able to take photos? Are you also just on the platform, or do you go, any closer to get these photos?
well, I mean, a lot of them are from the platform. And especially now that they have the new lower river, that whole boardwalk, that's really opened up a lot of opportunities. But sometimes it just happens. You're out on the trail and a bear comes, so you hide, but you still might take pictures. Or but a lot of them are, I'm not ever walking up on a bear and trying to get a closer picture. So that's the nice thing about my long lens as well. The bad thing about the 500 lens is that when I'm on the platform, if there's like a mom that comes up with cubs and they're right below me, it's too close. I can't get pictures of them all. So that's why I switch off every other day, and I do my 200 to 400, because that I can go back, it doesn't reach as far, but it will help me get some of the closer shots that I can't get with my other one, because it would just be like half of a face type of thing. So, but I don't ever try to walk up on a bear and get closer. I try to stick to the rules, only because, I've seen other people do it. And I've also gone with the rangers, or not rangers, but guides in, up the river and stuff like that. And sometimes that gets you close to a bear, not even on purpose, but just the bear's coming your way and you didn't even know it, type of thing. So, so yeah, I always recommend following the rules, because you never know, you know what I mean? So I'm not going to try to get closer just to get a better picture. I've got the equipment that I can still get a good picture from far away.
We applaud you for that. Having read the books we've read, we applaud you for that. Cynthia, and then a chat question, and then Bob.
So Theresa, thank you so much for being here. I really do appreciate it, and I know the group appreciates it. And this question may be for you and maybe also for Heather. I purposely did not buy your book at first, although I was very intrigued. And the reason I did not buy it until about 5 minutes ago was that I doubt I will ever get to Brooks. And when I first read the description of the book, I thought, okay, this is really for people who go to Brooks, and it's got great photos to go along with that. And I thought, are the photos great enough for me to purchase it? Or is it mainly for the people to go? And so even in just the first few minutes of everybody talking, I thought, okay, I'll just buy the book, because I buy books, 2-3 times a day. And so I'm always buying books. So it was nothing against you, but I wanted to tell you that there might be other people like me who are not sure. So maybe in the description, you may want to think about that other audience who might not go, but would still love to have all those pictures of bears and IDs, because that's really what I want, even if I never get there. I go there via the CAM and this wonderful group, but I don't know if I'll ever get there in person. So that's my only thought.
Well, thank you for that feedback, because that's something we can add, because I feel like especially a lot of the people, like I said, I tell people I'm in a bear cult that aren't. So especially a lot of the people on the cams, when I've posted on there, I know they're like, gosh, that looks completely different from the cams, because it is a clear, it's a clear picture. I can see what that bear looks like. So thank you for that.
Right.
Thank you for that feedback, because that's something
welcome.
that we can change in the description.
Sure. And I'm excited to get my book on Monday. So
Ooh.
great.
So I'm going to ask a question that's been posted in chat, and then we have a question from Bob, and then Carrie, and then Kara. And the question that was posted in chat, which I will read anonymously just in case, is this person says, I have an odd question. What do bears smell like? And do they have a soft undercoat of fur and guard hairs above? This person lives outside the US, and so they have no bears. Theresa, you've been to Brooks Camp 10 times. Tell us about the smell of bears.
Yeah, and I've been a lot of other bear trips too, Lake Clark and McNeil. They stink. They smell like poo and nastiness. Anytime I've gotten close enough to smell them, they basically stink, and their poop stinks really bad. And I say that from hiking in grizzly country when it's berry season, and you're watching your hands on your bear spray, and you're looking every which way, like in Glacier Park, and you can smell it. You can smell their poop. They stink. They're wild animals. They don't care. I think the bears in Brooks, I have had some close encounters. Smell has never been something that I thought, I was always more worried about, oh my gosh, don't eat me, please. So I don't know that I've actually, I think the bears at Brooks, because they're in the water so much, they probably don't stink as bad as other bears on land, because they're in the water all the time, and that's keeping them clean. But I'm assuming if you were to bed down with one, you wouldn't want to be there very long. That's just my own personal. Stacy, you've been, you worked at Brooks. I'm sure you could add to that.
Yeah, I don't remember, honestly, I don't remember a smell. That's not true. I have smelled where I've walked down the trail and smelled wet bear, and have assumed that it's like where a bear was sleeping. But it didn't bother me any more than like wet dog or wet sweater, But you're right, Theresa, our bears may be fresher smelling than other bears. Have you ever had a chance to touch bear fur? That was the second part of this person's question.
I have found bear fur. When I went to McNeil, we found different clumps of bear fur. It's just grizzly, I guess I would say. It's like rough hair. It's not soft and silky, like if you like a pelt or something, that's going to be all cleaned and everything. It's just rough, grizzly feeling hair. I know that sounds funny, but it's just like rough hair.
Yeah. Thank you for the smell test. Bob, I think you're up next, and then Carrie and Kara.
I love it. Our bathing bears. Theresa, thank you for coming on this book club chat. This is terrific. I have not bought your book yet, but I will as soon as the meeting here is over. So if this question is addressed in the book, you don't need to waste the group's time with it. But I just discovered Brooks at the end of this past summer. So I'm totally a newbie in basically how everything gets done. I would love to go up there this year, and if you can just let me know, again, if it's not in the book, what should I do? I'm in the Northwest, I'm in Oregon, so I could probably make this into a 3-day from a 3-day trip. What should I do? Where should I fly into? Then where should I fly to? And then who do I talk to about a day trip?
So, so my suggestion for you for this year, your only option is probably day trips,
Right?
unless you found a lodge that will fly you there every day. Because some of the lodges they've got, but most everybody's booked up for now. They're taking reservations for next year at some places.
Okay.
But for day trips, there is Russ Flying Service. There is Katmai Land or Bristol Adventures, and they can do day trips from 2 places. They can do day trips from Anchorage, which is going to be more expensive. I think those are like $800 or $900 per day, or King Salmon. So it's going to be cheaper to fly from King Salmon. There's a place called Ace that does it. I think if you just Googled, and there's places from Homer as well. I don't know the places from Homer because I've never gone from Homer, but I guarantee you, if you Googled it, you would find places that just Google day trip to Brooks Camp in Homer, Alaska, and then Anchorage, Alaska. So if you go to King Salmon, you're going to have to get a room there. I will tell you, it's not even really a town. I mean, it is, but it's not. So there's limited availability because you'd have to stay overnight. And lodging is going to cost you $200 a night, whether you're in Anchorage or King Salmon. King Salmon, it's going to be harder to find a place to stay, but then it's going to be cheaper to go across every day. They have a water taxi. I've never taken the water taxi, and I do know some people that have had some issues if the water taxi breaks down. So I don't know if I recommend the water taxi. The nice thing about the water taxi is that they go as early as 7 in the morning and then they come back. You can jump on one every 2 hours to get back. So if you didn't want to spend the whole day, but I can't imagine somebody not wanting to spend the whole day. So I would say this late in the game, your options are to either fly to Anchorage or King Salmon or Homer. And I would check all 3 places and then just see what they have available, because some of it is going to depend on if they're full too. You might have certain dates in mind and they might not have anything available on their flights. I will tell you, as a single person or 2 people, it's a lot easier fitting in these spots, because if they have a group of 5, they still have an open seat.
Sure.
So, it might be a thing where you call around and say, hey, I'm open on the dates. What do you have available? Because that would get you a lot. That would much more likely get you there on several day trips.
Right.
So, and a day trip is better than not going at all, as far as I'm concerned, because you're still going to get to see the bears. You're still going to have, you're still going to have the experience.
So Theresa, one last follow-up on this. I'll get to King Salmon, or I'll get to Anchorage, whichever, or Homer, whichever, and then I'll get a flying service to fly me there. So basically what happens is they would fly me there first thing in the morning, and I'll basically be on my own that whole day until they fly back that evening. Is that how that would work?
Yeah, and I will tell you though, a day trip isn't as long, especially from Anchorage. Anchorage, you get to Brooks about 10:30, and then you usually have to be back by 2 or 3 to catch the flight back. So King Salmon is a good option if you would be able to find lodging. And I'm not sure about Homer, because like I said, I've never gone from Homer, but
Cool.
But you may have longer hours there by doing the King Salmon. You may be able to catch an earlier flight and a later flight back for the day trip.
King Salmon it is. Thanks. Thank you very much, Theresa.
Sure.
Let me ask a follow-up, because normally, Theresa, I would advise people as well to call Brooks Lodge and ask about cancellations. Are cancellations not happening this year? Are they just so far backed up with the wait list?
Well, I will tell you, for instance, the July, all the, right now there, because you have to pay 90 days in advance. So
Mm.
any cancellations would be probably for September. If there are any, but I will tell you the last couple years, I mean, different for COVID, but now that people are traveling and stuff again, I mean, you can call and try to see if there's a cancellation. I just wouldn't hang my hat on that because now that people are out, people are like, no, I'm going, I don't care what's going on type of thing. So that actually is a good option too, to call and see. I wouldn't hang my hat on that. And especially July, they're already past the cancellations. So.
Thanks
Excellent.
for
Bob,
Stacy.
I've had some experience with the water taxi. I will email you about that after our meeting.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Sure. Carrie is next, and then Kara, and then Ginny. And Carrie, you'll need to unmute.
Okay, hi Teresa. I just got your
Hi.
book the other day and the photography is absolutely incredibly beautiful. Thank you. So I have a question for you. Since you're a longtime visitor to Brooks and you've seen it over the years, how do you feel it has changed? Just overall, and then also in regards to the increased number of visitors. And do you feel, have you noticed a difference in the bears' behavior at all, or the people's behavior that you see when you go there? And I will say I was fortunate enough to go in 2019 in September, and it was fantastic. I did apply for the lottery in 2023, and I was like 1,800 on the wait list. So I'm just thinking, if I'm 1,800 on the wait list, how many people are going to Brooks these days? So anyway, my question is, what changes have you noticed over the years? Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, first off, for the compliments and everything. And I want to say when I first started going, I think it was still popular, and they did have the bear cams and stuff back then. One of the biggest changes I've seen in the more recent years was the lower boardwalk that they built, because it used to just be the bridge that went across the water. And I will tell you, the first year it was built, I didn't like it. The first year they built that big long boardwalk, I personally felt, and just so you know, my view on a lot of things, I'm very much about ethical photography, and I do wildlife rehabilitation. I have for over 20 years. I have, I think, about 40 opossums in my backyard right now in cages. So I'm all about what's best for the animals, first off. And that's just my own personal feelings, maybe a little too stringent, but I'm always going to be about, if you do something wrong and that bear does something, they're going to kill that bear. So at first I didn't like the lower boardwalk because I thought it infringed on the bears, kind of on more of their habitat. And I also felt like, and especially that first year, I forget what bear it was. It might have been 879. I don't remember, but there was some bears that would not go under they would not even go near it, and they wouldn't go under it. And it was, I think, infringing on what their normal behavior was. But I will say now, a couple years later, the bears have gotten used to it. It does get people closer to them, and they are kind of already acclimated to the people. So my feelings on that have changed, but I will say the first year I just thought, that's terrible. They're infringing on the bear's habitat, but it's really a safe way, and it doesn't really affect, I haven't seen it really at this point. They're used to the people, and there's some bears that don't care. They'll walk back and forth underneath it, and it doesn't matter if there's 50 people up top. And there are some bears that probably still avoid it, or maybe it adjusts their behavior a little bit. So that's probably one of the biggest changes I've seen. As far as the numbers, so when I went this last July, when I pulled up there, I have a picture of it. There was the water taxi and 26 airplanes. I mean, they were all the way kind of around the bend at the end of Naknek. I've never seen probably more than 10 planes there. I have friends that went at the end of June, and I think a lot of people that don't know how the bears work, and a lot of people went in June this year, because I heard from my friends that went in June that it was terrible, that there was people letting little kids run around at camp like just by themselves outside. And we all know the bears go through camp all the time, but there was just a lot of littering, all those kind of things. When I went in July, it wasn't, even though there was tons of planes there, it wasn't as bad. And I will tell you, my view also is this is all of our national parks, and it's all of our responsibility when we're there to not only follow the rules, but to make sure other people are. And I know everybody's not comfortable with it, but I have no problem. I go to Yellowstone a lot and I see a lot of stuff there too that people shouldn't be doing. And I will open up my mouth. Grazer was feeding her cubs on the walkway to go to the riffles platform. And really the rule is you don't stop on the walkway, you can stop on the platforms. So walk by, take a couple pictures, 10 seconds, and then keep walking. But there was everybody crowding around, and me and the friend I was with, who also goes all the time, we said, look, you guys are disturbing her. And probably not a minute later, she got up and left. And it's like, so I'm all about respecting the bears and what the rules are. And I'm not saying I've never probably broken a rule, because I'm sure I've stepped off trail or done something, whatever. But I'm just saying in general, I try to let people know. I mean, I pick up litter, I pick up stuff, because it's not good for the bears to have even access to any of that kind of stuff, and it can cause problems down the road. So I think as more people learn about Brooks, more people are going. The other thing I will say is that my own personal thoughts are, with the world opening up, there are the people that love going to Europe and love going overseas and doing all that kind of stuff that kind of maybe stuck to national stuff. So maybe more people went to Brooks, and some of those people, it's just not their thing anyways. I mean, I had a guy that asked me, this was a few years ago, can I walk to the falls with you? He was deathly afraid of the bears. And I said, sure, because I go alone a lot, so I'm used to it and I'm comfortable with that. And we were probably 10 yards off of the platform to walk to the falls, the lower platform. And out of the woods comes Holly with 25 and 26 now, but it was their first year, spring cubs. She came out and headed our direction, and he turned around and ran back to the platform. And I had to yell at him to stop running, because all of a sudden she picked up her pace, coming right at me. And for me, I don't think it was because he was running, but I do think that when you're the person that's in between, it's they tell you, don't run, don't run, don't run. And he literally turned around and started running. So I'm not afraid to tell people, hey, you don't do that. This is a predatory animal. If you run, you may kick in their predatory instincts. And like I said, the good news is it was Holly, and she's used to people. Sorry. So anyways, so yeah, so I've seen some changes, and it does seem to be getting busier. And as far as the lottery, there's a couple things. There's kind of groups of people that you kind of know each other now. And if you get the lottery and you guys all apply, then you say, okay, I'll share my room with you 3 people. And then it's kind of the agreement that if they get the lottery, then you know what I mean? Then they'll let you stay with them. So it's also kind of a little bit of a networking thing and finding people. I've camped by myself there several times. I'm trying to think, 2014, 2015, I went with a couple of people. 26, yeah. So there's been years I've camped alone, and there's been years that I've had some friends come that we've camped, and then I never got the lodge. The lodge is really expensive, but I will say it's worth it. After camping and having to load all the stuff myself and trying to set up a tent when it's pouring rain,
Yeah.
I have had some experiences, but I will camp. I'll be 56 and I'm not getting any younger, and I won't camp anywhere else, but I will camp in Brooks if it means I can go. I just bought a really nice thick mattress, one of those blow up mattresses, so that at least I'm not sleeping on the ground and having back issues every day. So it may open up a little bit, because now people are going to other places, other countries and all that. So maybe Brooks won't be quite as busy. I don't know, but I can tell you it is busier. And there are more people doing things they're not supposed to be doing. And the rangers can't be everywhere. You know, sometimes they'll take pictures. If you see somebody doing something really awful, take a picture and show the ranger, and they'll talk to those people, because I have seen people do that. And I've also had a bear walk right up to me this last year. I was walking up the trail. Here comes the bear. I went off the trail and stood behind a tree, like, I don't know, 3 or 4 yards back. And the bear was coming, and then it saw me. I was making noise, you know, talking to it the whole time, like, hey, I'm over here. And then it just turned and walked right over to me and was trying to smell me. And it was just a sub-adult, but it was still scarier than, you know what I mean? And I just started basically reprimanding my dogs. I didn't start yelling at it, but I was talking really sternly, get back, you get away from me, knock it off. And just kind of how I would talk to my dogs when they're being bad. And I was about to start banging on the tree, and it backed up and then took off. But, you know, just more people it is going to mean more, because I've seen that in Yellowstone too, where people are just doing awful things. And I don't have a problem telling on them. I don't have a problem taking a picture. I'll be nice about it. I don't have a problem saying something like, you guys, you're disturbing the bear. She's trying to feed her babies. Just take a couple pictures and then keep walking, you know, instead of everybody crowding around and talking and that sort of thing. So it's definitely getting busier, and I hope I answered your question. I know I kind of went all over the place there, but
I just want to thank you for couching that in terms of kind of ethical photography, and also in terms of kind of what I would call active bystanderism. This issue of ethics is something that this group has talked a lot about with every book that we've read. So I think that's something that we all think about. The other thing that we've talked about the last 2 years, I think that there have been staffing due to COVID. Katmai has not been as fully staffed as they have been for in previous years. So I, Theresa, am grateful for the way that you help others kind of think about, you know, their impact. Kara, and then Ginny, and then I'm seeing a couple of questions in chat, but let's go to Kara and then Ginny, and then we'll go to the chat questions.
Hi, Theresa. Thank you so much for being here. Your book really, I guess, helped me tremendously, because I was fortunate enough to get a lottery spot in September of this coming year. And I was really worried how I was going to ID the bears. I had been making little charts of things in a little tiny book to carry with me. And so this is perfect size. I've already read it twice, and the descriptions and pictures are wonderful. And so I just wanted to ask you, you were talking about how you've been there in July, and then you have been in there in September, and I'm going to be there in September. So how did the crowds compare? How, what approach is different in September than the July timeframe?
I feel like although the last few years it hasn't been this way, but like when I've gone in July, you see tons of bears. There's not even there, you're seeing more bears than you can even ID. At one point, I was talking to the bear management in July, and we had counted 37 bears, and she got there after we did, and we hadn't been there quite an hour. It was later in the day. So a lot of the day trips have gone home. But I will say we counted 37 bears, and she said, oh, there's been 51 since I've been here. So a lot of the bears that we counted were probably a different bear than the bear that had just been there 10 minutes before. So you'll see tons of bears both times a year, because I think in September, it seems that I've only gone in September the last 2 years, and I've seen tons of bears both times I've gone. August, I used to hear that a lot of the bears left, but now it seems like a lot of bears are still staying in August. I will tell you, in 2015, I think we were there the last 2 days. You know, if you get the lodge in July, 3 nights is the maximum. And so we were there the last 2 days in July, and then the first day in August. And the last day in July, and it was an early fish run that year, so that means it stopped early. We saw like 15 or 20 bears the last day of July. And then the day we left, which was the first day of August, we saw 3 bears. we had gone to the falls and walked all around, and so that quickly the bears can change, but you never know what the run's going to be. And one of the options in September, if you have an early September slot and maybe a lot of bears aren't there, is you can take a boat ride over to Margot Creek. And it's about a 20-minute boat ride. You have to, you can arrange that with Kara in the office. And there's bears that go from Brooks to Margot. And for anybody that follows, that's where I saw 813 in 2020. So I went over there and she still had her cubs. And but she doesn't go to Brooks that much. She was well known at Brooks when she was a sub and a young adult. And then she kind of just stayed, I don't know if Margot Creek or that area, but I was one of the few people that saw her that year because not a lot of people went in 2020. And I ended up seeing her at Margot. So that's an option for September and probably August too. If you go in August, is taking the boat ride. It's about 20 minutes. It's a little bit of a rough ride, but you're there with a guide for 4 hours and you walk around and we saw plenty of bears. And I didn't see any of the ones that I recognized, but that doesn't mean they weren't bears that have been at Brooks either, because it's not that far. And so that's an option if you happen to be there later in the year. And I don't think they go over there in July. There might be the bears that stay over there, but yeah, so that's an option. So I love both times. You know, when they're there in July, they're skinny and hangry. So it's a little bit different. It seems like the bears are much more mellow. I see the bigger bears a little more tolerant in September when everybody's fat. Whereas there's a lot of fighting and stuff, as you guys see on the cams, it seems like in July, because they're all bucking for food and all that kind of stuff. But I would have to say I love them both equally. I couldn't pick. If I had to go one time, it would just kind of be like, well, we'll see what the luck of the draw tells me. So you'll have a good time in September. You'll see a lot of bears. I think the cubs are way cuter in the fall because they're little fat butterballs, versus skinnier little cubs that are, they're really leery and everything. And it just is a little more laid back as far as the bears' behavior in the fall. So I think you'll enjoy it. You'll have a great time.
What's the crowd difference, the human difference between July and September?
It seems to be less in September, definitely. But I think September's gaining popularity, so that may change down the road because more people are knowing, wow, you can still see a lot of bears in September, and July is so hard to get to in July. So September, Bob, you were mentioning day trips. September, that might be a time that you could get some cancellations or for the September trips, or it might be easier to do. The other thing you have to realize is in Alaska, sometimes September, winter starts. Last year, the weather was horrible. I mean, there were a couple of days that I wasn't even out for a few hours because it was storming. It was super, 30-mile-an-hour winds, raining. That you're not going to get any good pictures, if the weather's really bad. So July, you'll have better weather. I've been there in July of 2019, I think. We happened to be there the 3 days that it was super hot. So the fish stopped running. So a lot of the bears left. A lot of the bears went elsewhere because there were no fish spawning because it was too hot. That doesn't happen often, but it happened in 2019. And we went from seeing a bunch of bears the first day to nothing the last 2 days. I mean, very few bears stuck around. They went elsewhere looking for food. So you can't ever count on it. But I do think overall the crowds have been less in September, but you also have that weather element as well that may or may not hinder your trip.
I will say that one of my best bear viewing days was a day where it poured, because I don't care about getting pictures. I just want to see bears. And it was a day, it was pouring rain in July, and I had the Riffles platform to myself and I saw more than 30 bears. So it depends on what your goals are too.
Right.
Theresa, a quick question from the chat. Is your book available in Kindle? And if not, is that something that might happen later?
It's
Call you and
not,
read it to us?
it's not, but maybe yeah, I think right now, it's not. So but it is something that, that we might consider that we hadn't really talked about yet, especially just because of the pictures and all that. I mean, do you have to have internet to have the Kindle books or? Because I
Monty
don't,
says no.
okay, so people could still take it to Brooks and see it on their computers. Yeah, it's just not, right now, we're just kind of just working on the book, but I'm not saying yes or no to that. I don't know yet at this point. Let's put it that way.
Okay, good answer. Ginny, you're up next. And then if other people have questions, go ahead and raise your hand or put it in chat.
I got audio finally.
Yay.
Okay. Just wanted to make a couple of comments on some of the questions that you had earlier. When I was there in September, we went by a daybed for one of the bears, who knows who, and it smelled like urine and salmon. So that's all the bear smell I smelled. I walked by a big pile of scat, which I took a picture of because it had so many berries in it. And I didn't smell it, but maybe it had been there a while. I don't know. Anyway, a couple of other things. The water taxi. Yeah, I'm one of the people who had reserved it for 2 days and it didn't go. And so I was stuck in King Salmon for my last couple of days I had been to the lodge for 2 nights, but I wanted to add more time. And so I stayed in King Salmon and booked the water taxi and it didn't go. So that was disappointing for me because I thought it would be fun and I thought it would go when planes didn't go, but nope. And when I stayed there in King Salmon, I stayed at the Antlers Inn, which was great. People there were so nice. They also own the sockeye cabins and I had to move there for one of my nights. Let's see. And another thing was has anybody gone on the Katmai National Park Brooks Falls Facebook page? Because they have, I'm going to look at it now. They have people who have called and gotten rooms there, and we're not expecting to. And also there are some people who have extra beds in their cabin who are willing to share. So if you go on that Facebook page and it's Katmai National Park Brooks Falls, you may find something that's helpful there.
Thanks for those good tips. Pat Nelson, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. I apologize. But Pat, you mentioned at the beginning of our last meeting that you had an open spot in a lodge cabin for this summer. Are you still looking for a roommate for this summer, or have you found someone?
Well, you're looking at her. Your wreath is going.
Oh, cool. Excellent. Good. Yay.
Yay.
I'm glad that worked out. And Ginny, thank you for those tips. Theresa, can you speak to the very complicated question of weather? How do we, if somebody's thinking about going to Brooks Camp, how should they be, factoring the weather into planning?
Well, you just never know what you're going to get at Brooks. So one of the things I have in the book, always bring sunglasses, sunscreen, and chapstick. And that's for in case it's hot. But, and always bring good rain gear and possibly an extra pair of boots because I actually wear fishing waders. That's what I wear for photography anyways. I was just up in Washington taking some fox pictures and that's just my gear. I have my fishing waders and I suggest investing in a good pair, not just like the cheapest, and boots, a pair of thick boots. And that helps you if you're getting soaked and then you just throw a waterproof jacket on, but you have to bring rain gear or there's a good chance you'll get soaked even in July. Because I know Stacy, you've been there. It can be beautiful one day and it can be a terrible storm the next. So I always bring a baseball hat because that keeps my face, you know what I mean? Kind of keeps the water off my face if it is pouring. And that doesn't mean I don't put a hat over it. You can do a rain hat. The nice thing is, I think it's $30 a day now, but Brooks will rent out fishing waders and boots. So you can actually, if you didn't want to have to spend the money, because maybe this is the only time you're going to go, you could actually rent them from them for 3 days and then you've got it. And that's my main gear. So the weather, you just never know. And it has been very terrible sometimes when I'm there. So you just have to be prepared, and rain gear is a must. And having, like I said, an extra pair of boots, a couple pairs of socks, so that the ones that are wet are, the ones that are wet are going to dry out. I've camped a lot of years, and I have this great little Coleman heater. And you can get, it used to be $8. I don't know what it is now, but a small propane. They sell them in the gifts in the little shop there, the little shop at Brooks, and they're like $8. And I hook it onto my little heater for a tent, because I'm always cold anyways. And it lasts for about 8 hours. So you just light it, and obviously you want to put it in the middle of the tent, but it kept my tent warm. In addition to, one year it was pouring when we were setting up, and we had that thing going all the time to just help dry out our stuff because everything was soaking wet. So, yeah, I always expect rain. You can always bring layers, and you can always take stuff off, but if you don't have it, they don't sell a bunch of stuff in the store there. I mean, they do sell jackets and stuff, but especially if you're there in September, they're down to the bare minimum because they don't want to have to, store the stuff. So just be prepared for bad weather, because there is a good chance there could be some bad weather while you're there.
And I would say too, be prepared as you're thinking about your travel plans. Know that weather can, I spent a night in Anchorage because our flight was canceled, probably due to rain. So stuff like that happens. You're going to remote Alaska, you need to be prepared for that as well. The other thing is, like, nobody cares how you look. So, be practical, not stylish. If you have to choose, be practical, not stylish. Bruni, I see your hand up, and then I have a couple of questions in chat, but Bruni, go ahead.
I did a question on chat about the Kindle edition, because in my country, I think all the countries outside US, the shipping cost for the book is twice at least the cost of the book. So I do prefer to send my money to the author, not to the shipping company. That's the idea. My next question is about sun. When I am a Bearcam viewer, as many people in this chat, I recognize two things. One is the cameras, the camera view from the platform in the morning, in the falls. The sun is at the right of the falls. I hope you can follow me. So I know when you take pictures, you must have into consideration how the sun is in relation to the photography that you want to take. Can you follow me? So in the lower river, for example, from the camera's view, in the morning, the sun rises directly in front of the camera. My question about the sun is, how do you prepare your photography sessions based on the light? I assume the light related to the sun, and the bear's behavior. We know that bears are most in the falls in July, and most of the lower river in September, August, September. So these two variables, I think you have in mind when you think or prepare to take these beautiful photographies. Can you share any consideration about these?
Sure. I will tell you that I don't worry that much about the light when I'm taking pictures of the animals. That's something
Okay.
I consider more when I'm doing landscapes. Just know that if the sun is behind the animal, they're going to be in the shadows. Their face might be a little bit shadowed, but I'm more about getting the pictures of the bears, and there are plenty of pictures that I've taken that they're not great shots because maybe it is in the shadows and the sun is behind it. I still can see that bear, or I can lighten the shadows in Lightroom. I don't do a lot of stuff to my pictures, but that is one thing I'll do, is lighten the shadows to kind of lift it in scenarios like that. But in a case like that, you know, you can go to the Riffles platform and take the pictures of the bears that are up, you know, up to the left of you if you're worried about the light, and kind of just see where the light is. That might be a better chance. You know, you'll get better pictures down at the lower boardwalk, because any bears that are to the right of the boardwalk, they're going to be facing the sun. So you'll see the sun. So, you know, if that's something for you that is a consideration, you're going to want to just go, okay, well, I'll stay down in the lower part during the day. And I will tell you, there it's overcast there a lot. So the sun
Oh.
isn't an issue as much as you would think.
Oh,
There,
okay.
there aren't a ton of sunny days. I mean, it might be here and there, and I'm not saying it's not sunny at all, but you really almost want it overcast, so then you don't even have to deal with that, you know, with the sun being behind them versus in front of them. Sometimes it's kind of nice to have a picture of the bear that's backlit. You know, the whole top of them is all kind of light from the sun behind of them, even if they are a little bit in the shadows. And if it's that bright out, even the shadows aren't going to be bad. You'll still be able to see the bear and everything. So I don't worry about the sun as much when I'm taking pictures of the bears, but that's also not to say, you know, I'm not going to take maybe 100 pictures of that. Whereas if it was cloudy, I would take more pictures because they would be a little bit better. So does that
Perfect.
answer?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question from Bob, and then we'll go to Stacy. Where's Otis?
Theresa, a quick question for you about waders. I wouldn't have thought of that, but there's no reason then not to take a good pair of breathable waders and simply wear them all day long. Is that right?
Yeah, that's what I do. And it also helps with the bugs. I don't have a huge issue with bugs, but I have had friends that have had a big issue with bugs. It's still not going to protect maybe your upper, you know, like your face and all that stuff. But my fishing waders are my gear for photography. I just wear them 100% of the time. I'm always putting them on. If it's cold out, I'll put a couple of layers of long johns underneath it. If not, I might even have shorts on underneath. You know, if it's hot out. I don't know that I've ever worn shorts in Brooks, though. I'll be honest with you. I'm always cold.
That's
So
a great suggestion. I mean, Gore-Tex on top and breathable on the bottom. And I mean, you're probably good through any kind of weather. Thanks, Theresa.
sure.
Stacy, and you'll need to unmute.
Hi, Theresa. I was just looking at your book and I really enjoyed it. And I know it says the bears of Brooks Falls, but at the very end, you have a bunch of pictures of other common things you may see at Brooks River. And I absolutely loved the pictures, but there were no identifications. And I'm so in love with this bird, but I have no idea who it is. And it's adorable. But I was hoping that maybe in your next book, you would expand with more pictures of other things beyond bears at Brooks, because I think I believe there's like links and things. I think you should get out there and get going and get those pictures. So that's just my thought.
Thank you. I have been there when there's been links and wolf, and I've never had the opportunity to take them. So believe me, I would love to. But I would be happy to tell you what these animals are right now really quick.
Yes.
Okay.
Please.
So for anybody that has it on the first page, other common things you might see. The top picture is obviously a bald eagle.
Right.
The middle one is called a black turnstone.
Black turnstone.
Can somebody hold it up and spotlight it?
Working on it.
And then the last one is a pelagic cormorant, and I've only seen those in the fall. I guess they migrate through there in the fall. The big picture is merganser with chicks, and those are very common there. You'll see those guys all over.
So if you guys hit pin, that like will take up the whole, pin the video that you hit from 3 dots, it'll take up the whole screen so you can see it really well.
Are you going to hold it up again, Stacy? So
I'll hold up the mergansers.
Okay. Thank you. And there was something else. There was the bald eagle, and then
The black turnstone, and I think it's pelagic and a pelagic cormorant.
oh, okay.
is
And the
bottom
one
little
on the
picture.
branch, is that the cormorant?
No, okay, so
That's
now
the
those ones,
tungsten.
the big pictures, on the left is a female spruce grouse and on the right is a male spruce grouse. And his eyes
Oh,
are so red because that's in September and that's when they're mating. So that's kind of his, hey, look at me.
yeah.
So he
That
was
was
courting.
gorgeous.
He was courting.
He is
Yeah, he was.
awesome. That is such a great picture.
His eyebrows are so funny.
And then just some mushrooms, and then the next page is that's a juvenile bald eagle.
So Teresa, on that first page where there are three birds, I didn't get the distinction between the one on the log and the one in the water.
So the one on the log is called the black turnstone.
Turnstone, okay.
Stone, I think.
Uh-huh.
Turnstone. And then the bottom one is a pelagic cormorant.
Which just means in the seas, like a marine cormorant, is that right?
Yeah, I'm not, that's just the technical name of it is
Uh-huh.
and it, because there's other ones, there's common cormorants and that's a
Yeah, I think
pelagic.
pelagic refers to the ocean. In fact, I know it does. Okay, thank you.
Stacy, did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you very, very much. Thank you.
Theresa, there's a question in chat about weight limits, what to pack. When you're, and others might address this question as well. If you're flying in on the float plane, is there a limit to the amount of stuff you can carry?
So there is a 50-pound weight limit, which is really hard if you're camping, and especially my camera bag. I have a Pelican case, which is a hard protective case. It weighs exactly 50 pounds. I have it all whatever out that with the locks on it, it's 50 pounds. So I always know I'm going to pay more. Now, what you have to consider is if that flight is full and everybody's maxed out, your stuff might not get there for a couple of trips because they're not going to overload a plane. But most of the time, especially if there's possibly day trippers on your flight, people are not going to be maxed out. So there will be extra room and they can get your stuff to you. But just know that if you're over 50 pounds, take your camera gear with you and leave your other stuff because you'll get it. But, you know, kind of when you're getting on the plane, you kind of want to have some of the stuff that you need right away when you get there. Kind of think about it on the way. If something gets left behind, what do I want left behind? So like I'll wear my waders. Like I said, I wear them on the plane flying over. I don't wait to get there to do all that stuff. I want to be ready to go. So, so you do have to pay. And for me, I always have to pay. They do have a spot in King Salmon that, let's say you're doing all kinds of other Alaska stuff, which a lot of times I am, where you can leave stuff at their office in King Salmon and you don't have to take everything with you. So if you have an Alaska trip planned and you're doing other things, you can leave a bag, you know, take an extra duffel bag and just pack the stuff you need for King Salmon and your camera gear and then leave your extra bag. And it's safe. It's, you know, nobody's going through your stuff or anything. It's just like a little, like kind of like a garage that you just leave. It's in a protected, it's, you know, it's not outside. It's in a protected spot and it's there when you get back. And then you just get that and fly back to Anchorage or whatever. Also, for anybody that doesn't know, Anchorage on the bottom floor has a luggage storage that they charge you. And I forget what it is. It might be like $6 or $7 a day. And you could actually leave luggage in Anchorage if you don't want to have to haul it to King Salmon because you're not going to use it. You can leave luggage in at the Anchorage airport. And, you know, they're not open all hours, but they've got a pretty wide range of hours that they're open. So yeah, so you can check bags in Anchorage and just leave them there in Anchorage if you're doing other things in Alaska that you won't need it. At Brooks.
Excellent. Thank you. Planning. Elizabeth is next, and then Theresa, I'm going to ask you a question about McNeil, but Elizabeth,
Okay.
go ahead.
Oh, this is another planning question. Not that I think I'll ever get there, but I've heard people talking about you have to take your own water. So when you go on the plane, do you take extra water bottles? You know, if you're having to leave some stuff behind, and is that considered part of your luggage or is that part of your hand gear? Like
Yeah, oh, they weigh everything. You even have to, everything on your body, you have to get on the scale. They weigh all that. So you don't want to bring bottled water or anything. You want to bring an empty container because they do have a water station there of whatever, of what do you call it? Spring water or whatever. So they have a station there that you can fill up your water bottles. I wouldn't physically bring water because you're going to have to pay for that if you're over your 50 pounds. And it's just a lot to.
So at Brooks, so you take a canteen or whatever you take, and then you fill it up once you get to Brooks. Is that what you guys are doing?
Yeah, that's what I do.
Wow.
So I just take an empty container. Because even with all my camera gear, even the stuff that I'm carrying on, you have to get on the scale and they weigh everything. Your own weight is not, whatever you have on your person is not, they need it so they can calculate how much weight is on the plane. They don't charge you for that, but I wouldn't take bottled water because you can get water there.
Yeah.
Also, water is heavy. Books are heavy, which in my mind is another reason to carry like a small notebook rather than a full-size notebook. Probably not going to be doing, I think most people don't do a lot of reading while you're there. I mean, think about like, what are you really going to need to watch bears for a day or 3 days?
And what kind of bug spray are you using? Are you using like neem oil or something else?
I use this stuff with something called picaridin, and it's PICARDIN, and I've bought it online, and it's just a spray stuff. I mean, you can use DEET and all that stuff, but I think the picaridin, something like that, it helps because I think the DEET and all that helps with mosquitoes, but there's a lot of biting flies and other stuff. I haven't had as much of an issue as some of my friends have, and I think it kind of wards off a lot of them. I don't know if anybody else can weigh in on what they use, but I just use the picaridin stuff and it seems to work for me. You
So
can also,
I
you can
asked
also,
about neem oil, NEEM, neem oil, which is antibacterial, antiviral, and antifungal. But I don't know.
I know
if it's-
nothing about that. I don't know anything about that. And maybe somebody else does. I don't know anything about it.
I would
They
say
all have-
long sleeves, long pants tucked into your socks, because if you don't tuck them into your socks, the flies get up your pant leg. And on the really bad days, I wear the net that goes over your head. I've been there only in July, and Ronnie has posted that she hasn't had a problem with mosquitoes in September. It's the biting flies in July. I would like to ask a question about McNeil. Because Theresa, I think you've been to Brooks and McNeil. We just finished Sherry Simpson's Dominion of Bears, and she talks about visiting Brooks Camp, and she talks about going to McNeil. Theresa, what would you say about kind of the similarities or the differences between your experience at Brooks Camp and your experience at McNeil?
Somebody once asked me right after I got back from McNeil, if you had the chance to just do one, which would you do? And I couldn't really answer because it's actually a very different experience. I will say, and Stacy, you're probably this way because you lived at Brooks. You kind of, you're still afraid of the bears and everything, and you're wise in your decisions, but you do get used to running into them and all that kind of stuff. And I will say, now thinking back about that question, I would never recommend, if you could only go to one place, to go to McNeil. Because while it's an incredible experience, it's also incredibly scary. It's completely different from Brooks. And figure I had been to Brooks 8 times when I went to McNeil. 8 or 9 times before I went to McNeil. The bears at McNeil are very scary. They're big, giant. It's like a bunch of 856s, and they look at the people and they look at you scared, like they look at you. The bears at Brooks, they don't really look at the people. These bears are looking at you, and you're almost wondering, man, like the bears were a lot scarier in McNeil. I will say that. Not so much the ones close to camp, but you're camping. There's no fences or anything around the camp, so bears can wander through. Which to me, when you're sleeping at night, I think about Timothy Treadwell. That just isn't, it's hard to go to sleep at night when you're you know, and it's July, so it's light a lot of the time, but McNeil, you do have to bring a water purifier. You can't bring water. McNeil is a much harder trip, first of all, because you have to bring your own camping stuff. You have to bring your own water purifier. All the food goes in a cookhouse, and there's 3 stoves. There's a limited number of people. And then when you go in every day to the refuge, there has to be 2 people with you, 2 guides. They carry guns. And it's a long hike. It's a 2-mile, and you're kind of going throughout different areas. Some of it wasn't fun at all because you get to this big, muddy, mucky area where your boots are sticking in it's a hard hike. You're going up this steep embankment, and then you're coming back down it, these rocks. I ended up falling. I was like, save my camera. At one point we waded across the lagoon, and the water was up to up to like my hips. I'm short, but McNeil's a much tougher trip if you're not in even any kind of decent shape. You don't want to go to McNeil. It's a lot scarier. I would always recommend now that if I had the choice between the 2, I would go to Brooks, because I think, especially if you've never gone on a bear trip, going to McNeil is it's very serious. It's amazing. It's awesome. I mean, we were walking on this little boardwalk thing up right before the falls, and this bear named Big Head, because he's got a giant head, so he looks even bigger than he is. I mean, his head just popped up like right there. And you're with a group of people, but it's still a little unnerving. I mean, a lot of the bears really were looking at the people at McNeil, and part of me is kind of like, they weren't tolerant like the bears at Brooks were. They
Theresa,
didn't seem happy.
maybe your next book can be about McNeil.
I want to go again. I want to go one more time before I get too old, because it is it's a rough on your body kind of trip, just with, like I said, the camping and you have to haul water while you're there. There's a lot of different things that everybody kind of pitches in to do. And there's no electricity there either. So you have to bring batteries. There's nowhere to plug in and recharge anything. So what you bring, it's got to last you. But yeah, maybe down the road I could do a book on McNeil.
I see that Sienna has a question, and she has posted in chat that she's hoping to be at McNeil. Sienna, is your question about McNeil?
So thank you so much, Theresa. Like, this is so fascinating. But while I have you here, I just want to make sure that I will be okay. So with McNeil, I mean, I've hiked in Yellowstone. I've hiked in the Beartooth Mountains, so like 8 miles up, 8 miles down. I mean, will that be good enough to get me?
Yeah. No, I don't want to scare you, but and they don't leave people behind. They go as slow as the slowest person. But yeah, no, that's fine. But it is rough too. For somebody that doesn't do any hiking or anything like that, Brooks is very easy. It's all a groomed trail. There's very little elevation. And so McNeil, it's a whole different ballgame. Sometimes you're walking along this shore that's really rocky and slippery. And then, like I said, coming back down on this certain rocky part, I slipped because I had on kind of wet, the boots were kind of wet, and it was just this rocky thing that we had to kind of carefully walk down. And of course I was the one that fell. So, I don't want to scare you too much, but it's also not for the person that just like does a walk around their neighborhood every night. If you're not used to being, and it could be pouring rain as well. And like I said, walking through the muck, it was like 5 inches deep, and your boots were sticking. And so you just have to be prepared for that, that it's not going to be this nice little Brooks hike. Because Brooks, to me, unless you're going to hike up Dumpling Mountain or going to 10,000 Smokes, if you hike down to the bottom, that's pretty grueling. But coming back up is grueling. But for the most part, it's wheelchair accessible almost everywhere. So it's completely different than that. So yeah, I don't want to scare you. If you're doing a lot of hiking, you'll be fine, but just be prepared that it's not going to be. And if you go to the McNeil site, there's videos. They have like 5 or 6 videos. I recommend you watch them all, because there are ones where they'll show like when it's raining and all that. Kind of, you know, the general.
Thank you. I mean, it did look a little bit, and I'm not going to monopolize this, it did look a little bit terrifying. And they had this guide there that was basically like, if you do something wrong and I have to shoot a bear, I will never forgive you. You know, and you could just like see the people that were like, you know, I mean, and so, yeah, I mean, it's definitely different to what I learned about Brooks, but I have a friend who lives in Fairbanks, and he's like, get to McNeil before you get too old. It's like, okay. Quick question. Did you see
Yeah, and
Warsaw?
I would agree with that too, because that's why I said I want to go one more time, but soon, because it was rough on me. And it will just get rougher as you get, you know what I mean, as you get
Yeah.
older, because I don't know if 10 years from now I'm going to want to be doing that same hike and all that kind of stuff. So
I just have
How
one
many
more-
miles? How many miles in is it actually?
for what? To get to the falls?
No, for Neil, how many miles are you actually hiking in a day?
Probably 2 there and 2 back if you have to go the long way. But you can't just go either. You can't. So the way it works at McNeil is only 10 people and the 2 guides are allowed in the sanctuary every day. So for instance, I had they also have people that are bystanders. I got a bystander pass, which is less expensive. And it's just what I got picked for. So we were still allowed to go 2 days that other people didn't want to go. So first of all, you'll have priority if you're one of the people. And I think it's 3 days, 3 or 4 days. And so you'll have priority if you're one of those people that gets to go, and then you decide in the morning if you want to go or not. Sometimes if people have gone 2 days and the weather's really crappy that day, they just stay back at camp. But you can't wander you can't just go walk around like you can at Brooks. You can in camp, but you have to stay within camp. You can't step outside of camp at all. There's actually, that's not true. There's one part on the beach that if you let the person that stays behind know, that they will tell you the times you can go, and you can walk to the right, which is away from the sanctuary, but nobody can go to the sanctuary. And let's say the group of 10 of you goes to the sanctuary and the weather's really bad, and one person just says, I don't want to do this, I want to go back. They have to take the whole group back, and then they're all done for the day. So you also don't want to be that person that says, I don't know if I want to go, and then you want to turn around, because then you're basically screwing up everybody's day that didn't mind staying in the rain or whatever, because they won't let certain people go back. It's the whole group or nobody type of thing.
We definitely need a book on McNeil, Theresa. Kasha, I see your hand next. Go ahead.
Yeah. Hi guys. Sorry, I was a little late, an hour late, because of a big rainstorm that stopped me. But Teresa, and maybe Stacy and other people who have been to Brooks, I'd like to ask about the wheelchair accessibility, because we had a friend on chat many years ago. Her name was Cray. I don't know. Maybe some of you know her. And she was thinking about going to Brooks. And really, the idea stopped when we started discussing that sometimes you have to go off the trail when a bear is walking. And what do you do with a big person in a wheelchair? You can't just, yeah, and she never went.
So Theresa, I can speak to it from a volunteer perspective, and as could others. Theresa, what are your thoughts about wheelchair access at Brooks?
It's definitely doable, and I would especially say now with the lower platform or the lower boardwalk, that I know the falls is a big thing. Last time I went, I actually didn't even go to the falls every day, because it's kind of the same bears, and in the fall, it's not as many bears at the falls as the lower river. So even I think a person would be perfectly happy in a wheelchair, just even staying on the lower boardwalk, because you're going to have plenty of opportunity. And even in camp and going out on the beach, seeing bears there. You can definitely go to the falls. It's very easy. It's a doable trail. I wouldn't want to be the person pushing them because I hate even walking it because I'm lazy carrying my camera and stuff. But it's definitely doable. And they have wheelchairs. You just have to know that they won't reserve them. So if it happens to be a day that there's other people that needed them, you might not have a wheelchair. You can rent them in Anchorage to be safe. If it's somebody that has to have a wheelchair, you could rent it in Anchorage. There's also a lot of benches and stuff along the way. So if it's somebody that can kind of walk, they can go sit out on the boardwalk on different parts and sit down on the benches. There's different areas. They're really little storage benches, but there's areas where they could sit there for a while and watch a couple bears, and then they could walk a little bit farther and go down and sit there and watch the bears that are right at the mouth of Naknek Lake. So
I know
but
somebody.
it's definitely doable with wheelchairs.
It is, and I was going to say the same thing, Theresa. I think I know somebody from chat who went in 2019, I think, who stayed on the lower, it was 2019 because it was the new bridge. And she stayed on the lower river, the whole time, and she had a fantastic time. There are some people who, they want to go to the falls platform and they want to see the bears on the lip. I get that, but I get that, and it is doable in a wheelchair. It's harder, and I would say, walk with a group if you're in a wheelchair. Walk with a group always, but I would say maybe especially if you're in a wheelchair. Anybody else have anything to add on that point? Okay, I don't see anything. Anybody? Theresa, there's a question in chat. Is there a certain type of waiter that you use?
Hold on, let me go look at what they are. Hold on.
And while she's gone, Sienna, why are you interested in Waterfall the Bear?
I'm really biased about the Brooks bears. I just am. And Waterfall was the first bear that I ever saw outside of outside of Brooks, where when I saw a video of her, I just stopped. I stopped what I was doing. She is so beautiful. It's almost unbelievable. And she's massive. She's a big girl. At least that's how it appears on video, but I haven't seen her in person. And she was part of the reason for wanting McNeil. Yeah, so that's why.
So I never saw her. I've never even heard of that bear. We saw a lot of other females. A lot of the females with the cubs are close to camp in McNeil, whereas when you go to the falls, it's all the big dominant males, the big scary males. But I didn't even actually hear her name, so I'm not sure if she's still around there or not, because we did talk about a lot of bears, because I told them I'd gone to Brooks and they know a lot of the people at Brooks and stuff. And so I had a lot of conversations with the people that work there that have been there for years and know the bears there. But I did not hear of her or see her. And then on a different note, on the waders, I used to have Reddingtons, which were fine for a few years. They're not super expensive, but they're also a little bit bulkier and heavier. I now have a pair of Sims, which were a lot more expensive, but I like them a lot better because they're lighter and they're not quite as, they're just a little easier to move around. So I would say if you're going to buy waders, to go and try some on and see what's comfortable. Because all of them are going to keep you dry. That's what they're made for.
Thank you. Theresa, there's two questions that came in from somebody who couldn't be here today. This person wanted to know, and I think probably others do too, do you ever sell your prints of your photographs? And also, do you ever show your work in galleries? Do people have an opportunity to see your work?
So to answer the second question first, I'm part of a co-op gallery in Placerville, California, which is kind of about probably 60 miles from South Lake Tahoe. I live in Fair Oaks, California, so I'm about 40 miles from Placerville. And so I do have my work regularly in that gallery. Just because I'm so busy, I don't even have a website. I'm lame. I do sell my prints regularly. Typically, if somebody sees like a picture on Facebook that they like, they'll message me on what size they're thinking about and whether they want it. Like metal's the most expensive, and all the printing now has gone up extremely. I've noticed in the last like month and a half. But metal is, to me, it's the nicest. It really makes vibrant pictures. But there's also canvas, and then there's also prints that you can go and get framed, but even framing now is super expensive. So I don't do the framing or anything like that, but I would either do a metal print or a canvas print or or just the paper print. And typically what I do is I send it to the place, because it's an online place, and then they just send it directly to you. And I have PayPal, so I would just PayPal somebody. But they would, so people will contact me and say, hey, I really like that fox picture that you just posted. Can I get it in a 16 by 20 on metal? How much would that be? So sometimes it's a matter of them figuring out what size they want and that sort of thing. So we just kind of arrange it ahead of time, either on Facebook Messenger or by my email.
And do you have a special, how do people find you on Facebook, Theresa?
Just by my name. I'm public and so just by my name, they would see my pictures and all that.
Excellent. Fabulous. Somebody wanted to know, have you told us your favorite bear? Do you have a favorite bear? And if yes, who is it?
I don't have a favorite. I have a group of favorites.
Is 89 Backpack one of them?
He is not.
Ah.
He isn't. I love Popeye and Lefty. I was there the year that Lefty showed up, and just like when I read that section of Mike's book, I knew exactly it was Lefty because I happened to be there when he showed up and just started. He would fight with anybody. He's just like, I want food. And it was like, who is this bear? He's like so badass. I saw him fight with Otis and take stuff from Otis, and he was like 1/3 of his size. I've seen him fight with 68. So I love Lefty just because he was a badass when he showed up. I love Popeye because I think he's super handsome. One of my new favorites is 26. And that's because when I was there in 2020, she was like, and I whether you like the Kardashians or not, they're beautiful people. And she was like this little poser bear that every time I would go and start taking pictures of her, she was always in the lower river. She would like pose for me. She would like be looking at me with a fish sticking out of her mouth, and her fur, when it dried, it's kind of heart shaped. So her face looks like a heart. I think the bottom picture of her in the book is an example of her heart-shaped hairdo. And I just fell in love with her because she was just so animated when I was taking her picture. I love 503 because I have photographed him every year since my first year that I went to Brooks. I have pictures of him with 402 and his 2 siblings. And I photographed him every year as a cub. When I was at Brooks in 2014, when she had abandoned him for a couple of days in camp, I got there and they were back together for about a week, but I was only there 3 days. So after I left, she had abandoned him permanently. So I had pictures of her and him together for that short time they were reunited in 2014. And then to watch the story of how, the cub being on it, 503 being on his own for a week. And a lot of the rangers and stuff thought he's not going to make it. He's caught 2 fish in a week. And then Holly adopting him. And then I have pictures of him and 719 playing together as cubs. He was like twice her size because he was a year older and he was a male. But I have pictures of them playing together. I have pictures of 719 in her wrecking tree that she'd get up and just like start wrecking that tree. So I love both of them. I love Holly for adopting her. They all are favorites in a way. It's hard for me to pick just one because I know I had thought that maybe it was 26 that walked up to me, but showing the pictures to bear management, they thought it might be 102. So I really love, there's things I love about every single bear. I know a lot of people hate 856 because he's a cub killer, but man, he's a handsome bear, and he didn't get where he's at by being a nice guy. You know, I mean, that's part of their world. So he's not my favorite bear, but I appreciate him, and there's things I love about him. I think he's awesome looking. So I have a lot of favorites. It's hard for me to just say I have one favorite because I really don't. 171, she's a bear that I didn't see her this last year, but I saw her a lot in the past, and I feel for her because she's had so much tragedy with her cubs. So I can't just pick a favorite. I just have, they're almost all my favorites.
Your love for all of them honestly comes through in all of your photos. Theresa, remind us, when are you going this year?
So I will be there the 29th through, I fly back on July 3rd. June 29th through July 3rd. And then I go, and this is our trip from 2020 that got kind of can't moved forward. So, and then in September, I'm there the 12th through the 16th. I think we fly out on the 17th. It's 5 nights. So 12, 13. Yeah.
And
So we fly back on the 17th.
And you'll post pictures on your Facebook page, and maybe if we're lucky, you'll have time to post them in chat as well.
Yeah, and I've been bad about chat because I haven't even been on Facebook as much. Right now there's a lot of fox pictures because I just got back from a fox trip in Washington. But typically I'm posting a lot of bear pictures all the time. I know some of my people, I always warn them, if you're sick of bears, you might want to unfriend me now but you can just follow me too. You don't have to, I've got a public page. So if you want to just see pictures or whatever, you can just follow me.
Kasha, I see your hand raised and you'll need to unmute.
Yes, I'm sorry, I hope nobody gets offended, but in the context of the Dominion of Bears book, I hear people talking about bears like about men. Like this one is handsome and that one I respect. Guys, maybe there is something wrong with us.
Or maybe there is something right with us, Kasha.
I think so, yes.
That's why I tell people I'm in a bear cult.
Yeah.
So
you're among friends, Theresa. You fit right in. Heather, you're still here. I want to give you, Heather, what can you tell us about Travel Guidebook? What's coming up with Travel Guidebook, both with the contests and with your upcoming Breath of the Bear issue?
Oh yeah, thank you, partner. In case you guys don't know it, Stacy is my late night camera partner on the cams. And I just want to tell you how dedicated she is. She's on the East Coast. I live in Alaska, so it's not late for me. But this wonderful woman gets up, she goes to sleep, sets her alarm clock, gets up in the middle of the night to get on bear cams with me.
We'll just edit that out of the chat.
No,
talk to us about Travel Guidebook.
Okay, well, I just want to, I just think that that's wonderful. But we have Travel Guide will be launching the 2022 edition this coming week, and it'll be available digitally. And that includes Breath of the Bear, which is the bear guide that talks all about bears, where to go see bears, bear safety, and all of those good things. There's a whole section on Katmai, and then it's our 46th anniversary, and we're giving away a whole bunch more bear viewing charters for 2 that you can enter our contest for the chance to win. Our good friends at Raven gave us round trip tickets from Anchorage to King Salmon. So you and a friend can fly from Anchorage to King Salmon and back. And we have multiples of those to give away. We have bear viewing charters out of Homer. We have one out of Southeast Alaska for the black bears that go to Annan. We've got more than that. I'm not in that mode yet because we just got finished with the publication. So I'm trying to finish that up. But yeah, enter, because there's lots of people on the chat, and there's some here that have won some of these, and that you don't have to buy anything or anything. Just put your name in there. And
And
good luck.
Heather, is that on Facebook or where do we find?
That's on our Facebook page, travel guide book.
Starting when?
Well, I'll have the entry. The digital editions should be ready by midweek, and then I'll have the entry form right after that. So just keep looking, you'll see it. I'll make a big announcement on our pages and I'll post them throughout the summer so you can keep entering. We got all kinds of prizes to give away, tons of prizes. And then I wanted to say too that Theresa will have a website eventually, because we're building one for her.
Leaf, did you have a question?
Yeah, Heather, could you post the link to your website? Maybe I missed it. Maybe you did that earlier and I missed it. If you haven't done that, would you please?
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah,
I'll
thank you.
I'll do it right now. And we have Theresa's photography or Theresa's website will be justhername.com. So we have the domain name, but her website, we'll be working on that within the next couple weeks to get that up and going for her.
And Theresa, somebody has asked, what is the name of your photography Facebook page? Where do they find your photography page on Facebook?
I don't have a separate one. That's what I said. I'm lame right now. It's just my my name. And I just post pictures all the time. So there's just not a lot of bear pictures right now, but if you went to my photos, you'd see, like, especially after I go to Brooks, that's all I post for a while, is like days and days and days of bear pictures.
There is
So-
a lot of interest in, I rarely send a post meeting email, but I will for this one. It'll take me a while to get the recording posted, but I'll send a link to the recording, a link to Travel Guidebook Facebook, a link to Theresa's Facebook, and water taxi info. Theresa, this is asking too much, but I feel like this has been such a helpful, Theresa and Heather, both of you, I feel like this has been such a helpful chat. If people had other questions, is there a way to, if people maybe sent questions to me, could I compile a list and send them to you? Would that be
Sure.
okay?
Yeah. Yeah. If you want to just shoot me an email if everybody's got some questions afterwards, and then I can, and some of them may be questions that somebody else doesn't know that they want to know the answer to. So yeah, if you want to send me a list of questions and I can respond and you can send it out to the group, I don't have a problem with that.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, me too. Or you can just ask me on the Facebook page, whichever's easier. It's heather@travelguidebook.com.
Excellent. Are there any other quick questions for today? We had so much to cover. I feel like
just want to thank you for doing this, Stacy. And I want to say Theresa's book is so informative, educational. It's beautiful. And I hope she comes out with another edition and adds even more bears, because I think it's just wonderful. And it's the perfect size to carry around with you.
I would agree
You did a
completely.
great job.
Kasha, something to add?
No, just a question. Probably because I was late and you were talking about it in the beginning. Which part of this book are we talking next time? The whole.
Yeah. So thank you for that. We will switch briefly to logistics for our next book. But before we go to the next book, I want to offer a formal thank you to Heather and to Theresa.
Yes, thank you guys.
One of our best chats ever, I think. I think we all learned so much, and it's a fantastic book. Also, we couldn't see Theresa today, but here she is.
Thank you, Stacy.
So I should have held this up through the whole chat. If you're at Brooks Camp in July or September and you see this person with the long lens, that is Theresa Bielawski. So thank you very much. Thank you all for coming. Anybody who is If you need to leave now, that's totally fine. But if you want to stay for just a few minutes and talk about our next assignment, we will do that quickly. Otherwise, thanks everybody. Thanks for joining us. So for the die-hard readers in the group, we are getting ready to start our third book. Barry Gilbert's One of Us, A Biologist's Walk Among Bears. Whoa, Kasha, you got your copy already. That's amazing.
It is amazing. When I like the other guy it will reimburse me, but it just came in like a week.
That's
The
great.
new one. It was
Excellent.
amazing, incredible. I'm so happy.
So, I see a lot of people have the book. First of all, we had talked about meeting on June 4th, but I'm going to go see Ranger Betty Reed Soskin on June 4th. I would not bump book club for many things, but I will bump it for Ranger Betty. So I hope you all saw my email that our first meeting on this book will not be June 4th. It'll be Saturday, June 11th. So 1 week later than usual. And I just kind of arbitrarily said, let's read pages 1 through 37. That's the first 4 chapters, which sounds like a lot, but this is not Dominion of Bears. It's a much quicker read. So I think that gives us time. June 11th, 37 pages. Questions, comments, concerns?
I don't want to cut in here, but I do have to go. So I just wanted to tell everybody, thank you. I would love to do the book club. It's just really hard for me because I always have stuff going on the weekends because that's a book I want to read. So I'm going to get the book. I know I can't be there on that date, but I just want to tell everybody, thanks. Thanks for the great feedback. Thanks for the great questions. Yeah, you can contact me. You're welcome to follow me. I know not everybody's on Facebook, but thank you very much. And I hope that everybody loves the book because that was kind of my whole goal, was to make something for everybody to enjoy.
I think we loved it at the beginning and now we love it even more. So thank you very much, Theresa.
Thank you, Theresa.
Thanks, everybody. Sorry about the camera thing. I even actually put makeup on today, so oh well. All right,
There she
bye,
is.
everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.
So yes, I will send a link to the recording of this talk. That takes me like a few hours to get that recording going, so that's not going to be immediate. But I'll send an email with a link to the recording of this, a link to travel guidebook on Facebook. I'll send a link to Theresa's Facebook page. And if you have questions for Theresa that you want to kind of consolidate, just email me and I can put together a document and, you know, forward that on to her for one response. Does that sound all right? Any other questions about today or about June 11th? All right.
That was really fun to hear her. That was really, really fun.
She has a lot to, she's got so much going on, and I feel like she shared so generously today. That was
Absolutely.
yeah, it was nice.
Yeah.
All right. If nobody has anything else, then I think let's call it a night. It's 6 o'clock on a Saturday. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
Thanks, Stacy.
Thank
you.
Bye. See you guys in
Bye.
3 weeks.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Stacy.
Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much.